I'm Tony Robbins. Welcome to The Body You Deserve. We're shooting this program outside here just to remind you of the kind of vitality and energy you deserve to have. The kind of energy that you could feel if you just get rid of not only the excess weight so you'd look better, but so that you'd feel the energy you deserve in your body as well. And I want you to know that I'm committed in this program to help you to produce lasting results. That in this program, what we want to do is not just inspire you to do more, not inspire you to just lose weight, but to give you strategies that are proven and that will work to help you to accomplish the long-term change that you desire and you deserve. I want to start out first by thanking you and telling you how much I respect you, because I've been through this myself. I weighed 38 pounds more than I do now almost 8 years ago, and I made those permanent changes that I'm promising you. And after I tried what I thought was everything else. In fact, I want to warn you. If you're saying to yourself, I've tried everything, stop that phrase right now, because it's not true. You've not gone through the strategies that we're going to show you on not only how to create change, but how to condition those changes so that they truly last. You know, one of the biggest challenges that people have in dealing with any kind of addiction or any kind of behavior that they've been trying to change for some time and not really been successful at is they often get caught up in something we call learned helplessness. Learned helplessness is where you get to the point where you think a problem is permanent, where you try to tell yourself that you need to change, that you want to change, but in your gut you don't really believe that you can. Or when you start thinking your problem is pervasive, like because you haven't held your body, your whole life is screwed up, for example. Most people are really successful in many areas of their life, either in their influence of their children or in their business, but they have one area they haven't mastered, and usually it has to do with their body, or maybe smoking, or maybe some other aspect of life itself. But I'm here to tell you that those changes can occur, but you first have to make 3 simple changes. Number 1, you're going to have to raise your standards. Otherwise, the change will be temporary. What do I mean? When I say raise your standards, I mean develop a new sense of what you must have in your life. What you're willing to settle for will have to change. Physically, emotionally, mentally. How are you going to feel about yourself? It doesn't happen just by saying, well, I want to change. You have to, in your mind, identify yourself as a different kind of person than the way you've behaved in the past. Secondly, you're going to have to change some of your belief systems. Because if you set these real high standards for yourself, say, this is what my body's going to be like, this is how I'm going to live, this is how I'm going to eat, this is the kind of energy I'm going to have, but inside your head you really don't believe it can happen, it's already over. You won't achieve what you want. You can't have high standards and not believe, because if you don't have that sense of certainty, you and I both know the first time you get tempted, the first time you run into a challenge, you'll give up. And then thirdly, if you got the standards and you got the beliefs, then you've got to have the right strategy. You can't just want to change. You got to know how to. Let's say you're in an airplane and all of a sudden a pilot grabs his chest and has a massive heart attack. You may want to fly that plane right now, but you got to have more than want. You got to know how, or you're still going to crash. We're going to show you proven strategies that have worked for tens of thousands of people to create that lasting change that we've been talking about. The big question, though, is why don't people normally change and make it last? Well, I think one of the reasons that people don't successfully change is, number 1, the things we talked about. They never really raised their standards. They really didn't change their beliefs. They didn't have the right strategy. But most importantly, they didn't know how. I'd like to share with you 6 master steps in this program that will help you to create that lasting change. And we're going to help you go through those 6 steps through 2 phases. Phase 1, we're going to prepare you for the change. Too often people try to change something instantly, and they're not mentally and emotionally prepared for it. And then secondly, the actual process of change. What's it going to look like? 6 primary steps. Step number 1, we're going to help you to identify what do you really want. Now, as simplistic as that sounds, most people don't have a clue of what they want. Most people, when I ask them, what do you really want? What do you want to change? What do you want to make better in your life? They usually tell me what they don't want. They talk about, well, I don't want to have all this excess weight. I don't want to look this way anymore. I don't want to have to always be on a diet. Your brain will go after whatever you focus on. I know when I was in racing school years ago, one of the first things they taught me was the power of focus. They said, look, Tony, if you're going to be a great racer, you can do everything else right, but you've got to learn how to come out of a spin. And in life, we've got to come out of spins, too. The spin of getting caught up in being addicted to food or being addicted to some habit that doesn't really support us. And they said the key to this process is that when you come into a spin, you've got to immediately focus on what you want, where you want to go, not on the wall. Because whatever you look at, you'll drive into. The metaphor they gave me often was if you're driving down a country road 100 miles an hour, we all hear stories about a guy in his Porsche driving along, and all of a sudden he loses control. There's only one telephone pole within a mile or 2. But what does he do? He stares into that pole and drives right into it because that's what he's afraid of. You can't focus on what you don't want. You've got to focus on what you do want. If you do, things will change. So we're going to help you define that. Step 2, we're going to help you to begin to get some leverage on yourself. Leverage means it's not enough to want to change, as we just said, but where you got to get to the point where change is an absolute must, not a should. Many people say, well, I should lose weight, I should go on a diet, I should have more energy, I should make these changes. They just should all over themselves. They don't actually make any changes. Should things we feel bad about when we don't follow through. It's those absolute musts that make us follow through. Now, how do we get that to happen? Well, through this program, we're going to show you some ways to get that leverage on yourself where not changing equals massive pain. If you've studied any of my work, you know that my core belief is that all human behavior is shaped by two things: pain and pleasure. Our need to avoid pain and our desire to gain pleasure. The problem is, in the past, the idea of like going on a diet or doing something to lose weight had mixed emotions for you. You thought, well, I really want to make the change, but simultaneously, will it really work? Maybe I'll go make the change, I'll give up certain foods, I'll give up certain lifestyle that I really enjoy, and then in the end, I'll just gain the weight back anyway. Why even try? You've got to divorce yourself from that belief system, and you're going to have to make this idea of changing a must, not someday, but today. You've got to make it so compelling that you're driven, that you're no longer willing to settle for a person who's less than what you deserve to be, and where you're compelled to become the kind of person physically, emotionally, and your energy that you've always dreamed of. That's what this program is really about. So we're going to show you ways to get that leverage. Step 3, once you got the leverage, you've got to interrupt your patterns. Some people to the point where they say, Tony, I know I got to lose weight. I know what I really want. I got all kinds of leverage. I must change. But there's a problem. The problem is every time I try, I get caught back up in my old habits. It's so true. Human beings are often the creatures of habit. How do we turn that around? Well, we've got to interrupt our patterns. Those conditioned patterns are going on automatic pilot. A simple example is if I say to you, Winston tastes good like A, most people respond, cigarette should, and that's been off the air for more than 15 years. See, what you and I have to do is discover, where do we overeat? What is it that we do in those situations so that when we all of a sudden find ourselves overeating or not exercising or giving up or whatever that pattern was, we've got to interrupt it, we've got to scramble it so that we automatically try something new. And step 4, you've got to find a creative and empowering alternative to your old behavior. What exactly does this mean? Well, how many times have you told yourself, I'm going to quit, I'm going to stop, I'm not going to eat anymore? Well, you've got to eat. You can't not eat. That's why it won't last. There's only so long without food. There's got to be a better alternative than that. Or a better alternative than just running and working your guts out until you burn out and don't have enough time to exercise. The key to lasting change is not just to desire the change, not just to make the change a must, not just to get yourself to the point of breaking your old pattern, but you've got to find a way to meet the original emotional needs that got you eating or doing whatever it was you were doing that got you overweight in the first place. See, we've got to meet our needs or the change won't last. If we just take things away, you can forget it. In fact, there's a great deal of research that's been done in the last, I guess, 10 years on addictions, and I've studied quite a bit of it. Nancy Mann did a study in 1984 for the International Journal of Addictions, and what she did totally verifies what I'm talking about here. She interviewed people and focused on people over a 10-year period of time who had various addictions, specifically drug addictions especially, and found out what happened when these people were forced to give up their addictions. An example would be somebody who had a drug addiction who's then put in prison. Well, the bottom line is the minute that the legal system wasn't around, the minute this person had an option of change, as soon as the external environment could no longer force them, you can guess they went back to drugs without a doubt, immediately. So the second group of people she studied were people who really wanted to change. They had the desire. They wanted to do it on their own. Nobody was forcing them to do this. The challenge was, on average, a person lasted 2 years before they backslided. And the challenge, as you might guess, is these people were in a situation where they wanted the change. They were trying to create the pressure from inside, but they didn't have an empowering alternative. The third group she studied were people that found something else to replace what they were doing, whether it was smoking cigarettes that they wanted to change, or stop overeating, or using drugs. And in every case where people lasted, where they created lasting change, the people found something else to replace the old behavior, whether it be a love of God through some connection that they made through religion, whether it be the passion they put into their work, or a new relationship, or a new project, or idea, or concept. Something gave them a new drive, something fulfilled that emotional need.